My decreasing expectations that got lower and lower during the lead up to this movie's release probably tempered the opinion that I walked away with, but you know what? I thought this was pretty okay. Not quite as good as the first, but certainly not the travesty that some were claiming. Welcome to Sandwich Reviews. I'm the Talking Sentient Sandwich, and there might have been quite a few glaring flaws that detracted from the overall experience that are still making me question whether this was worth the ticket price. I mean, a musical sequel that adds Lady Gaga as Harley Quinn? Sign me up. It's kind of baffling that this movie wasn't a slam dunk, but I guess the constant rewrites that apparently happened throughout the film's shooting may not have been a great idea, but that's not important. I'm here to talk about the movie that we got, and the first thing I should get out of the way is how good it looks. The camera is given this slow and methodical motion that persisted with at least 80% of the shots, and I'm glad that kept me engaged because the story absolutely refused to. The use of muted colors that became accentuated when the hyper-real aspects came out was also inspired, though those vivid musical moments still could have gone further with the color and vibes. I could see myself gaining a deeper appreciation for the story told just from the camera work alone, but frankly, I just can't get over how boring and uneventful the first hour is. Once the legal drama stuff started, I was more entertained, but the time taken to get that momentum picking up is too long and most of the audience will have checked out by then. And even with all the courtroom stuff, I'd take that with a grain of salt, because I will always love a courtroom drama. Something about the structure and debated morals will get me invested every time. Though with that, I do wish more time was spent in that setting. Of course, if the filmmakers wanted to dissect the events of the first, that was the correct way to do it. I just wish it was done better. But let's move on to the biggest aspect of the movie, which was that it was a musical, whether the studio and Phillips tried to bury that or not. Yet, out of everything, that was the most disappointing part of the film. I could get into some people's complaints that the movie abandons and even disowns what the first did, but I didn't see it that way. And if the music had any kind of impact on the themes, I might have been even more willing than I already was to accept what the narrative did with Arthur. Nevertheless, more on that later. But really, what is this movie about? Mental illness? The danger of delusions? Identity? Parasocial relationships? Is it a combination of all those? If it isn't, one should have been chosen as the focus, and if it is, then it's just straight up a mess. So if you enjoyed the first and didn't personally identify with the main character, needing him to stay the alpha male that he obviously wasn't at the end of the first, then I'd give Joker Folie a Deux a watch. Because despite the consensus on the internet, I do think it's worth checking out, if only for the thought-provoking conversations that will inevitably follow. But now, it's time to get into the many spoilers, so make sure you've seen it before you keep watching. Ready? Alright. Even though it's not really a spoiler, I want to discuss the musical aspect of the movie and why that was disappointing to me. I doubt this is actually what the filmmakers were thinking, but it's almost like someone in the writing stage suggested that it could be a musical, but instead of singing out loud when those scenes came up, they would actually be happening inside the main character's mind. And yeah, that's what a musical is. They've always been able to pause the narrative and just spell out exactly what the audience needs to know, whether that be character motivation or themes. But for this particular film, that isn't even the case, because multiple times people do sing diegetically. And frankly, that just confuses the audience on when the character is actually singing or if it's just in their head. And that confusion could be part of the ambiguity, I guess, but I want to question the narrative and themes, not if a character was inconsequentially singing this one particular time. For every new musical scene, I would wonder more and more whether that whole aspect was even necessary. There's the thematic side of it, which could have been laid up to be phenomenal, describing how music has been used to remedy a broken mind. One doctor says those exact words about music being used to heal, but subtlety, as well as just a deeper dive into that subject, was sorely needed. And that all did have a basis in reality, where music is genuinely used to help mentally ill patients. Just look to Coco for a beautiful example of that in film, but the sequel to The Joker never struck the emotional chord that they were looking for. And not just that, the music itself wasn't even that good. Most may be meant to be slower songs that are more spoken word, but I should have been walking out of the theater humming at least one of those songs. Even if I had a gun to my head, I couldn't tell you the rhythm or name of any of them. There was a somewhat catchy church choir one about building a mountain that I kind of enjoyed, but it's not like it was good enough to compel me to listen to it afterwards. And then there's the dynamic between Harley and Joker, and there could have been more tension throughout, especially considering they didn't really have any chemistry, but I liked everything it covered with parasocial relationships, and how Harley had taken it as a given who this person was, ignoring the human side. And that human side is something that a lot of real-life fans of this movie often forgot. Sure, that separates him from the theatrical comic book version, something I'll talk about very soon in a video essay coming in the next week. But this is undeniably a different version of the character. Plus, maybe it's just me, but I have no problem with the Joker being a separate personality to Arthur. That doesn't take away from Arthur's actions in the first movie, it only expands upon them, clarifying how this awkward and shy character could have potentially used one of his coping defenses to create the Joker, a fantasy role that he could step into to gain control. The movie even starts out depicting that fully, and in a fun animated cartoon no less. Was that whole aspect planned out or even alluded to in the first? No, it wasn't even thought of yet. Yet I still liked the expansion of the character. And I can understand why it would make some fans furious that Arthur was unceremoniously killed at the end. However, I thought it was a fitting conclusion to that specific adaptation of the Joker, because just like the director said, this Joker was never going to go out and become the clown prince of crime. But those are my thoughts on Joker, Folie, Deux. Leave a comment and let me know if you had similar problems with the narrative, or if I pronounced the title of the movie wrong. And as always, thanks for watching. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe for weekly video essays and reviews, and enjoy a delicious sandwich.